The cave smelled like ash and old grief. Ethan Cross had been hiking the Veldrath Mountains for 3 days, mapping fault lines for the geological survey, when the sound stopped him cold. Not a growl, not the crack of stone, but something smaller. Something wet and desperate. A whimper. He pushed through a narrow fissure in the rock and found her. She was no bigger than a golden retriever, coiled in the center of a scorched stone nest, her scales the deep amber red of cooling embers. One wing was bent at a wrong angle. Her enormous eyes, iridescent gold, slit-pupilled, blinked at him through the dark. Around her, 3 shattered eggs. And no mother. Ethan stood very still. His training said, do not approach unknown fauna. His contract said, document and report. His radio, crackling with static, said nothing useful at all. The hatchling made the sound again. He stepped forward. He named her Ember on the 2nd day, when she sneezed and cinched his jacket sleeve and then looked so horrified at what she'd done that he laughed for the first time in weeks. She'd refused to let him leave the cave. Not aggressively, she hadn't bitten him, hadn't blocked the entrance with fire. She'd simply followed him to the mouth of the cave the first evening, looked out at the dark, looked back at him, and made a sound so quietly devastating that Ethan had turned around, set his pack down, and said, okay. One more night. That was 11 days ago. His supplies were running thin. He rationed crackers and dried fruit and shared his water. Ember, he discovered, could drink from underground springs she'd shown him, nose first, pressing her snout to a trickle in the back wall. She was self-sufficient in ways that surprised him. She could hunt. She could regulate her own body heat. She could, apparently, purr, a subsonic rumble he felt more in his chest than his ears. What she couldn't do was be alone. He understood that with a clarity that had nothing to do with logic. On the 5th night, she crawled into his sleeping bag, all 40 pounds of her, scaled and warm as a furnace brick, and fell asleep pressed against his ribs. He lay awake staring at the cave ceiling, acutely aware that he was cuddling a dragon, that his career supervisor would never believe any of this, and that he was in absolutely no hurry to leave. The wing healed crooked. He'd done what he could, set it with splints fashioned from his tent poles, bound it with strips of shirt, changed the wrappings every day while Ember held very still and watched him with those gold eyes like she was memorizing every motion of his hands. It would never let her fly, probably. Not high, not far. He didn't say this out loud. He wasn't sure if she could understand him. She reacted to tone more than words, tilting her head at questions, settling at calm sentences, but she watched his face when he talked as though she was filing every expression away. You're going to be okay, he told her, on the day the swelling finally went down. He was still kneeling in front of her, carefully rewrapping the wing, and she pressed her forehead against his chest with a sound like a slow exhale. You hear me? You're going to be okay. She made a sound then that he'd never heard before. Low. Deliberate. 2 syllables. He froze. She made it again. It wasn't a word, not quite, not in any language. But it was unmistakably shaped like one, aimed at him with a directness that stopped his breath. It meant, you. It meant, mine. It meant something that, in the mouth of a human child, might have been rendered as dad. Ethan Cross sat back on his heels in a cave on the side of a mountain with no supplies and a broken radio and a dragon hatchling looking at him like he was the entire world, and made a decision. He wasn't leaving. The survey team found him on day 19. 3 field agents, a medic, and his supervisor Dr. Una Marsh, who had hiked 4 miles upslope with the expression of someone who had written his disappearance report twice and was deeply annoyed to be editing it again. She stopped in the cave entrance. Ember was in Ethan's lap, asleep, her tail curled around his boot. Una stared. Cross, she said. Hey, document. Is that? Yes. Is it? She. A long silence. One of the field agents made a very quiet sound that might have been oh my god. Ethan. Yuna's voice was slow and careful, the tone of a woman choosing each word like she was diffusing something. You understand that what you are currently sitting in is an unsurveyed dragon's nest, with an apparently domesticated. Not domesticated. He didn't look up. He was running his thumb along the ridge of Ember's spine in the absent way of someone who'd done it 1,000 times. She's not domestic. She chose this. She chose. Yuna pressed her fingers to her forehead. You cannot keep a dragon. I'm aware of the regulations. Then you know. I know. He looked up then, and something in his face made her stop talking. I know all of it. I know what the survey will say, and I know what the ministry will say, and I know there are 17 different protocols that make this complicated. He looked back down at Ember, who had opened one gold eye at the noise and then closed it again, apparently unimpressed by bureaucracy. But she called me Dad, Yuna. 2 weeks ago she didn't have a voice. Now she has one, and the first thing she used it for was. He stopped. Yuna was quiet for a long moment. Then she sat down cross-legged in the cave entrance, pulled out her tablet, and began writing something that was definitely not a disappearance report. Tell me everything, she said. From the beginning. If we're going to build a legal framework for this in the next 48 hours, I need every detail. Ethan blinked. She's a minor, Yuna said, without looking up. An injured, abandoned minor who is bonded with a licensed field agent in a supervised government capacity. A small, precise smile crossed her face. I've seen worse arguments for emergency guardianship. Ember stirred, stretched one careful wing, and made the sound again, soft, certain, directed at Ethan like a compass pointing north. He put his hand on her head. From the beginning, he said. Okay. Outside, the mountain wind moved through the fissures in old rock. Inside the cave, something new and impossible and entirely human was taking shape, a man who had walked in alone, and would not be walking out that way. Because when something small and hurt and alone looks at you and says you are mine, when something chooses you with its whole being and asks only that you stay. A human, a real one, doesn't leave. That's just what humans do.